Joining us today is Congressman Troy Downing. Congressman, thank you for joining us. I know it's been a busy, probably 24 hours, maybe even 48 hours now that you're in DC. Can you take us through the process of reopening the government?
Yeah, right. And obviously, this has been a long, drawn out process, but we're really happy that at least we can see the light at the end of the tunnel right now. But yes, we're all back in DC. We're going to have votes on the House floor tonight. I believe it's starting 4 o'clock. Eastern time. And once we get through those, and we're hoping that that goes through fairly quickly, first of all, we're voting on the amended CR that came out of the Senate. So they changed the expiration date on that because originally we were given 7 weeks to work on our appropriations bills, our funding bills. And obviously we've run out of time because the government's been, shut down so long. So that's extending to the end of January. And then there's three appropriations bills, and it'll be great. There's 12 appropriations bills total, but we're voting on a package of three of them. And that's agriculture, that's MILCON, so supporting the military, and also the ledge branch. So basically supporting us to continue doing our job here in DC, all the bits and pieces of that. So what's good about that is those will be 1 year appropriations bills. So they'll go through a normal fiscal year end of the next end of next year, and we can focus on the 9 remaining. And I'll tell you, we're all excited about getting back to work. Let me reframe that because we've been working. I've actually gotten bills into the hopper during the shutdown. We're just not having the floor votes, and we're not having the committee work, but we're still doing the legislative work. I just got one in the hopper a week or two ago on allowing alternative investments in 401ks, and there's some other things we've gotten in there. So that work is happening, but now we can get back to our committee work and get back to our floor votes so that we can start pushing forward our agenda. The next big things, obviously this will keep the government open for a little over a month. And the work in the appropriations committees, both on the House and the Senate, has been moving along. Now we just need to get those to the floor. And then if there's any differences between the chambers, between the Senate and the House, they'll have conference committees to reconcile those changes. And like most things, I think 90% of this is going to be fairly easy, and then there'll probably be some more difficult conversations towards the end. But the good thing is that as soon as we get this signed and reauthorize that continuing resolution to fund the government, now we can start paying our federal employees, start paying the military. We can get back to making sure that SNAP and WIC are funded, that USDA disaster relief is funded, because our farmers and ranchers really depend on that. And I'll tell you, our grain growers here, they're struggling right now. We need to start getting some of this money back that people are depending on. So I'm really happy that that's going to happen once we get this through the House. And then the real work, continues of trying to get the rest of those appropriations bills. Everybody wants to get back to regular order where we're appropriating bills for a fiscal year and we get it done before the next fiscal year. And hopefully this builds that muscle memory so that these types of wranglings are a thing of the past, because government shutdowns are not good for anybody, not good for people, not good for business, not good, obviously, for our service members or our federal employees. We need to just work together to get these bills passed.
Well, you covered a lot of different areas, so I'll start with the federal workers in Montana. When do you think they could start seeing their paychecks, but also even receiving some back pay?
Well, I think that is all going to start moving forward as soon as we get through this vote. I mean, as soon as we get through this vote, my understanding is they'll start, doing that backlog, at least processing it, tomorrow. So hopefully they can get through that process really quickly and they start to see those payments. And there's obviously so many things where we need to get people back in there. Air traffic control has been one of the big things. I know you mentioned Montana. I did visit with our Air ATC and TSA folks over at the airport in Helena, checking in on them about, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. And it's horrible that they've been, expected to show up without getting paid, but they have been. I mean, that's Montana. It's got to make you smile that Montana, they have been showing up. And then now they'll get that, much needed back pay and continue to get paid on their regular cycle.
For Montanans, that because there's a lot of federal employees, forestry workers, like you said, the TSA. For those that have kind of had to go without, a lot of them might have had to use credit cards. And now you're talking about interest rates that are as high as 20, 25%. How how do Montanans kind of get back on track? And also, they're also concerned and worried about what happens after January 30th. Are we going to go back through this again? That's
Well,
a big concern.
I certainly hope not. In terms of credit card debt, I know there have been programs for federal employees for access to low and no interest loans. I'm not sure if they've all taken advantage of that. But yes, we do have another deadline coming up in a month and a half. And here's what gives me hope is we saw that this shutdown, where the American people were held hostage for 40 days, and now I guess going on 42 until we get this through the House, there was no policy wins here, and there shouldn't be. This was a non-political continuing resolution to keep the government open so we can do the work on these appropriations bills. And I'm hoping that that message was heard loud and clear that we actually need to get in committee, we need to debate these ideas with stakeholders, and we need to get to the point where we can pass bills in regular order and not use these, red herring to hold the people hostage, because you feel that that's the only lever you have and are willing to put the American people in pain to get your political leverage. So I hope that lesson's been learned, and I hope that we don't see, more struggle. And as I mentioned earlier, most of these appropriations bills are going to be easy. Well, fairly easy, uncomplicated. There's probably going to be a few that are more robust debates, and I'm hoping that we can find consensus because the appropriations process, by its very nature, is a bipartisan process. Generally, when it comes out of the committees, you've got the ranking member and you've got the chair on the House and the Senate side that all have to agree as these bills come through. So that's a Republican and a Democrat on the appropriations committees, and then you've got to get the body to agree with that and vote for it on the floor. And I'm hoping that the body agrees because the appropriations committees, I think, have done, fantastic work in finding consensus bills to present on the floor to get passed into law.
And just listening to you, I think you answered, but I just want to make sure to clarify. You said some you may think will be easy. What do you think are those easy ones, but what are the roadblocks specifically, you think?
Well, I think the conversation has been, pretty clear, and I think that this is a conversation that we need to have, is what we're going to do about medical care and health insurance in this country. And I think we need to, really find consensus answers because the reality of it is the Affordable Care Act, just like the Inflation Reduction Act, were ironically named. Nothing has contributed more to increased cost of health insurance than the Affordable Care Act. And we need to get, folks to the table to figure out how we can deal with this because we're in an endless cycle of adverse selection, meaning healthy people are coming off and the sicker people are staying on. And it creates this cycle where rates go up, and the higher the rates go up, the more healthy people come off and the more you concentrate that risk. And we need to figure out that along with the rising costs of health care, of pharmaceuticals. There's so many things that we need to actually have a respectful conversation here to find a consensus opinion on how we deal with this problem.
I'm glad you brought that up because according to an October story by CNBC, research done by KFF Research, they believe that health insurance premiums for plans could go up to as much as 114% on average. And, Montanans here, we keep getting feedback from viewers. They're scared about the
Right.
cost of insurance. What do you say to the Montanans that are worried about their premiums that could be going through the roof?
Well, here's something they need to understand about health insurance is it's regulated, first of all, at the state level, although the health side, falls under CMS, under the federal. That's the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. But some of these insurers, and here's something where it's gotten blown out of proportion. Some of the insurers, every year, they file their rates for the next premium year, and those rates are approved by the state regulator, and then they're approved by CMS, by the feds. And they're given a range that's actuarially justified on where those rates can come. And some of them keep picking at the lower end and some pick at the higher end. And eventually that all needs to catch up. So in Montana, the worst we're seeing in the individual market, which is just folks that buy insurance, in the marketplace for themselves, they don't get it through their work or through an association, is on the high end about 25%, which is a high number. And on the low end, it's in the, mid to upper single digits because some of those companies have had bigger increases in the past and some have had smaller increases in the past. And you're seeing this kind of equilibrium. The argument that they've been saying about these enhanced premium tax credits in Montana, that's a really small amount. There's 80,000 plus or minus folks that buy insurance insurance on the individual market in Montana, and the enhanced subsidies are a subset of that, obviously. And most of those folks are going to be just fine with or without that. But the rhetoric you see out there of people saying, because of this bill or not, signing on to extending the enhanced premium tax credits, saying that their, increases are going to be, triple or quadruple. That's just complete fabrication. The worst we're seeing in Montana is 25% for a very small amount of payers.
I know we have limited time here, so I know a lot of you represent a lot of rural area as well, and so with the shutdown, a lot of that area has been affected. What's the message to them? Because we're getting feedback that people in those areas are concerned with the shutdown, and then especially the government employees like forestry workers.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about the healthcare, the legislation that we've passed with our reconciliation bill is really not going to affect them. Everybody's talking about, the Medicaid part of that and having work requirements. That's the same as Montana state law. Having a requirement that you're not an illegal alien, that's not an issue in Montana. And the provider tax credits, that got dropped to a level federally that is still above where Montana is. So it has zero effect on Montanans. And so those rural healthcare facilities are something, and those critical access hospitals, something that I care deeply about, that they continue to operate, because some of those, their income is 90% from Medicare and Medicaid, and obviously they can't afford to lose a lot of that. And I'll say, and I've said this multiple times, if you find something in this bill that actually adversely affects somebody in Montana, let me know, because our research shows that to be de minimis at best, if anything. And so that's a big part. And then the other part is obviously that $50 billion in the Rural Healthcare Transformation Fund that we put into the reconciliation bill. That's about $500 million to support rural healthcare in Montana. And I've been working with the hospitals, with DPHHS, on understanding how that money is going to be used and making sure that it's being used to actually have long-term effects on being able to support rural healthcare and critical access hospitals in rural Montana. And I'm really glad that they have some great ideas in the application that was just filed about a week ago to CMS for those monies, because I was worried that some of it would be squandered. That's a big amount of money that can have a long-term impact, and I believe that it will in Montana.
I know you have to go here in a second, but I do want to ask, government workers such as the forestry industry, it's always been considered stable work. Are those still considered good jobs?
I'm not sure how I would answer that for you. I mean, obviously, we require, folks, doing those kinds of jobs to help us, nationally and in Montana. And to the extent that we're right-sized in the number of employees to do that, I think that they'll continue to have support.
And you mentioned we'll learn some more later today. Is there any concerns that you have that things won't get done? And because it's going to be a long day for you. So what do you foresee? Is there any roadblocks, any concerns?
Well, obviously you don't know what you don't know, but our expectations is there will probably be some words spoken on the House floor today, but I believe that we're going to get this through, and I'm really hoping that when we do pass this, that we have bipartisan support, because the CR was bipartisan to start with. There were no poison pills. There were no policy. This was really simple. Just keep the government open. And as I mentioned, the appropriations process is almost always bipartisan in nature. The bills that come out of the appropriations committees are bipartisan. So I don't understand why somebody would try to kill this at this point, because we need to get back to work. And I'm just going to say, one of the things that some folks struggle with here is allowing perfect to get in the way of the good. And I think we've got some good bills. I think it's good for America to move forward. We're going in the right direction, and nobody is going to get everything they want. And that's just the nature of governing.
And you mentioned you've always been busy, and so I guess you have a project that you were working on, I guess with Red Lodge. Can you tell us a little bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the things that I'm excited about, is we actually had an appropriations request for infrastructure in the Red Lodge Fire Department. Obviously, our first responders are incredibly important, especially in areas like Red Lodge. And so we have a just shy of $2 million appropriation legislation that's coming through if we pass this that will actually get that across the finish line so we can get those much needed funding, to Red Lodge to help them with their fire department.
Well, I appreciate your time. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the viewers that are watching and are concerned because they want the government to go back to work?
Well, we're working hard, and I just want people to understand that just because the government's shut down doesn't mean that we're not still working. My staff has still been here in DC. My staff has still been traveling the state in Montana and District 2, and I've still been going between both of those, trying to get policy passed and trying to deal with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to find consensus on what's moving forward after the shutdown. So, if you've got questions, comments, concerns, reach out. We're downing.house.gov. Just go to the bottom, and there's our phone numbers.
Well, Congressman, we appreciate your time. And again, I know it's a busy day, but thank you for taking time out of your schedule to chat with us and let us know what's going on and what we can possibly expect.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you.